Yeah, I probably need to do a lot of things. I want to get a second camera set up so people can look at my ugly mug while I'm drawing and talking. Probably want to get a less rattly chair. It's comfortable as can be, but it's noisy. And yeah, there's got to be like the load screens. Apparently, that stuff I got to do in OBS. So yeah, I'm gonna have to. I'm kind of mentally holding off launching into OBS for after I get the second camera, because then I can set up the 2 camera setup properly and do all that stuff. Are you hearing me okay? All right, cool. I figured I'm going to start off talking about rubber stamps because I still get a lot of questions about it. Now, the rubber stamps I use, they're just standard wooden rubber stamps you can order anywhere. This seems to be a going small business concern all over North America, if not Europe. And you can submit a art file to the local rubber stamp maker, and they will laser cut. See how close I can get into the camera there. You can see those dots. So they can laser cut incredibly fine little rubber posts. Put it on an angle, see if you can see all that. Now, the reason I do this, and I've tried to order more, but the guy who did my last rubber stamps retired, so I have to find a new supplier. But I have these rubber stamps. I have 2 made so far. I wanted to have like 5 by now, with different textures and patterns and darknesses. And I just take a standard ink pad. This is really nice, large ink pad I got. And this kind of gives me the ballpark. I'm probably not going to make stamps any bigger than that, because that seems to be a pretty big size. I think that's about 4 by 6. And there's a lot of ink in one of these. And I just load up the way you'd normally load up a rubber stamp, and stamp on the artboard. And I think you can see it there. It's a little darker on one side because I smudged it a bit, but it gives me a nice zipatone effect. If you guys are old enough to remember the plastic sheets of zipatone or transfer tone, which you could rub down dot patterns. And I can do things where it's like I can just like push down a corner and like wave it a bit, and I get like a fade effect. And this is the lighter. This is based on a 20% zip tone screen. It's also called I'm trying to remember the brand. In Deleter. Deleter has a brand of tone sheets and a massive range of densities, darknesses, and textures and everything. So this was the first one I made. And of course, I started small because I wasn't sure if it was going to work. And I fell in love with it right away because I can do just nice big flat areas. Here, this one, I didn't wiggle it as much. Nice gray tones. I can do gradations. I can mask off areas. And a lot of times I'll use Post-it notes. I think everyone's familiar with Post-it notes. So I can mask off an area if I just want to do a simple mask to limit where I want, like, let's say I got some line art here and I don't want the tone going into it. And I have like this somewhat shape. I just want that tone in. I just pop that in there, and I just get the rubber stamp going there, and it dries reasonably quickly. I still give it probably, the same amount of time I give like a liquid ink pen or something, just to make sure it doesn't smudge. But that gives me a nice dark pattern right there. And I'm very happy with it. Like I said, I'm going to make more. And I'm probably going to make a couple of other small ones just for details. But I'm also going to make some larger ones that fill up this full 4 by 6 pad so I can actually do quite large areas of tone. Now, there was some specific textures I wanted to make, like almost like it looks a little bit more like splatter from an ink brush, so I could just slam that down. Um, there's a couple of textures that I have as digital files on my computer from the old Lectretone books that I want to make. That just they're almost like white noise. They're really nice and random. But this is the second one, the second rubber stamp I made. Now this one I believe is a 3x4. Yeah, 3x4 stamp. And if you can see the bottom there, it's really, really dark there. And it does the obvious effect there. It gives me a fade from dark to light, or light to dark, depending how you're looking at it. And it's dirty and noisy, kind of like the way I draw. And it just goes down, and it's wonderful to have this type of thing there. It's like I'm rendering with a lot of line work, and I just want to kind of even it out, like the gradation from light to dark. I might hit it with the stamp after I do a bunch of rendering, and has become like this wonderful little tool to do all sorts of things with. And you don't even have to put it all down evenly. I just rocked around the outer edges, and I got this kind of like weird distressed dark area here, and I can do it with like the light end too. And you get these wonderful things. Sometimes if you smudge a bit, you get these nice little lines, and they remind me of the early days when photocopiers started being used by artists a lot, where they'd put a drawing on photocopier, and as the copy mechanism was moving across the drawing, they'd move it, and they'd get these little blur effects that would show up in the artwork in a really, really interesting way. So there's things you can do like that. You can stamp it down and then smudge it, and then you just get a lot of dirty noise. And that'll, depending on how you scan it and how you set your scanning settings, that'll turn into something else once it's all turned into a bitmapped TIFF for line art for comics. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll lay down a little bit of tone like that, and then I'll take white paint or correction pen, and I can like draw it back down to white. Do all sorts of pattern, sign in it, all sorts of things. And you just create these white areas in your otherwise gray tone. So you're essentially painting out the black again out of the pattern, and you can do all sorts of interesting effects there. On top of like also, like just smudging the wet correction fluid and getting other little splatter effects. It's really, really versatile. Like I said, I want to have an array of, I was hoping I'd have at least 5 by now. And one of them would have been just a flat area of tone like this, but 4x6. So I can just fill a large area with like some essentially a mid value that I could go back with ink and paint out of light areas and darken some areas with some rendering. Some other patterns, which I feel weird talking about these other patterns I'm going to make someday, when I'd much rather just on a stream show you the patterns as I bring them. And if you can see in the one I just made here, there's all these areas where, because I didn't press really, really hard on the ink pad, a lot of areas where the ink just didn't load up properly. And it just creates this unevenness, a more organic texture than traditional Zipatones would have made. And I find that just feels more organic, even though I have essentially a very mechanical process putting it down. So yeah, so that's my rubber stamps. Find yourself. Probably the best people to go after would find a rubber stamp company that's done rubber stamps for people who scrapbook. I've seen a lot more of those in the States than in Canada. And they'll be probably far more flexible in thought in terms of understanding that you want to create patterns or textures to stamp down into artwork. Because the first 2 I went to had only done business stamps, like, invoices and stuff like that. And when I told them I just wanted a tonal pattern, they were like, it was like cartoonish robots from like 1960 Star Trek that I could hear sparks going off in their brains. But eventually I found the guy who knew exactly what he wanted. He just had me send an array of high resolution files of the dot pattern I wanted, and he cut them within a couple of days, and they were ready to pick up. And I'm very, very happy with them. Unfortunately, he did sell his business because he retired, and the new people that took over haven't really seemed to understand what I want yet. So I'm in search of a new person to make my rubber stamps. I might have to do it in the States and have them shipped up. But yeah, I did promise a few people that I would talk about rubber stamps, and if they unfortunately didn't see it, I'm going to be loading this up to my regular YouTube channel after I finish it. I finished tonight's video, and tonight's video, one of my because I didn't have anything else I could draw live because everything is like top secret and everything. I opened it up to my Patreons, and one of them asked me to draw their original character from Conan Exiles. This is some of the reference he provided. He provided a whole bunch array of this pirate type character from. If you haven't heard of the game, there's a video game called Conan Exiles, and you can design your characters, I think, from all facial features down to the physical attributes. And I believe it's a skirmish style video game, and you can control your characters that way. And so he has this really, really interesting blonde pirate, and he wanted me to draw her. So I did a couple of sketches leading up to the big pencil cleanup. This is where I took the drawings I was kind of happy with, and I did them big because, you know, when things shrink, they tighten up and they look better. So I scanned this into Photoshop as I want to do, because if I screw up in the inks, I don't want to have to draw all the way over for again, especially in a home commission. So I scanned it and I made it smaller. You can see it. I also cleaned up a little bit of the line work and I made it smaller. So this is what I'll be inking live. I think, yeah, it looks like you can see it. That's blue line printout. So that's what I'll be inking today. And the goal is with these to go from 1 to 2 hours, depending on how long the work or what I'm doing for you guys takes. And I've already got the next 2 Sundays booked up with art. Next weekend, same bat time, same bat channel. I'm going to be drawing the Black Cat. And then the week after, one of my favorite characters ever is, I should take the script off here just in case you see it. One of my favorite characters I always love drawing will be Hellboy. So next week, Black Cat. Week after, Hellboy. If you're interested, you can go to my art rep, Cadence Comic Art, and they have the open slots for the commissions that will be done on Sundays. I don't think we're going to go more than a month beyond. So it's like, I think there's 2 more open, but then we're going to cap it until I actually get those done. And yeah, I think that's all the preamble I need to get into. I just got to pop on my reading glasses so I can ink properly and start inking this girl here. Let me see here. Look at the chat before I start in. So Sylva's here. I said hi. And JC Dragon 81. Hey, good evening. It's good to have people here instead of like talking into the void. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. It's just me. I don't have a moderator or anything. So I'll just have to look up every once in a while and see if anyone's asked any questions. So I'll talk about material as I go through. So this is one of my go-to drawing pens. Let me put the cap on. It's a liquid ink ballpoint with a titanium tip, so the line's really consistent. It's made by a company called Oto. Let's see if we can get that up there. It's a graphic liner, beautiful line quality. If I'm not using these, I'll be using one of these Rotring Tiki Graphic. This is a 0.1, but I use a whole bunch of them. It's a pigment ink, liquid ink with a marker felt tip. So it also gives me incredible quality line flow. It's very situational why I'll pop from one to the other, but this gives me a lovely basic flat line to start with. If I need to go finer, let's say like in the eyes or the eyelashes, I'll jump over to, let me see if I can grab them quickly. Here we go. Oh, there we go. 005 Same thing, much finer line weight. And if I want to go a little heavier, I got a 0.3. Now, the one thing about these ballpoint pens, the line's very dead. If you're not familiar with the term dead line, that's like a flat, almost mechanical line. Markers have a little bit more flex in the tip, so there's a little bit more pull and control in what I do, but it allows me a lot of real fine motor control. I don't have to worry about like with a brush where it goes really, really swoopy or heavy. Now, if I want a slightly heavier or brushy line, I use these. Derek Robertson recommended these Unipin fine line felt tip, brush tip marker pens, and I'm really happy with this. This gives me a anywhere from a super fine stroke to a nice, I guess, fat line. So let's say about 2 millimeters wide. So those are my first initial tools. Then I have one of these Pentel color brush pens, but instead of using the ink that is in this, which I hate because it's tacky and sticky and everything, I took it apart, emptied it out, cleaned it out, and I filled it with fountain pen black ink, carbon ink. And that allows me to do very brushy. This is a synthetic tip pen, so it takes a lot of abuse. And it allows me to do all sorts of effects. I probably won't be using it on this one. Maybe in the hat, because she has a black hat, black pirate hat. What else do I use? Oh, for more real brush effects, I have my Pentel. Actually, this isn't a Pentel. This is a Kuretake Sable brush pen. I honestly can't remember the actual number, but this is a sable tip brush pen. I fill this with carbon ink too. It's fountain pen ink. Gives me beautiful brush strokes. It's equivalent, I guess, of a 2 or a 3 traditional watercolor brush. And I don't go much heavier than that. My line work tends to be pretty fine overall, so that covers everything I generally need. For filling blacks, when I do a large black area, I might outline it with a Posca black paint pen because it's very matte. It's easier to scan because it doesn't reflect the camera very much when it's on the scan bed. So I'll outline an area, then I'll go in heavier with either a thicker Posca, which I have here. So this is a nicer, it's like a classic chisel point marker, but he puts out that matte black paint. And I have a couple larger ones, but I think the biggest one I got is this Sharpie. Now, this is great for filling in large areas of black. You can see it's just massive. And it just lays a ton of like water-based paint in black. It's not Sharpie pen like the alcohol marker. This is actually a paint marker, but it covers like crazy. More often than not, I'll do 2 coats though, because I want it to be as black as possible for scanning. So that's my primary tools. And I think I should start. Oh, okay. So, yeah, maybe I should get a moderator if this catches on and I start getting more than 1 or 2 people at a time. Okay, so I'm going to start with the eyes because if you screw up the eyes, you might as well start over again. So if I get them right, then I will. I got a good start. So I'm capturing the outer rim of the bottom of the eyelid. Heavy up that line a bit because I don't want the idea that there's some makeup there because it looks like she's got some. Maybe put this on here. It looks like she's got some line work in some of the reference I got sent, some eyeliner or whatnot. And I'm using the 005 because it gives me the finest control for a line. So as soon as I double it up, it becomes almost a 1. And just making nice heavy outlines around the eyes. Some eyelashes. think I want to use a circle template for the actual eyes themselves. I freehanded them a bunch of times, and they're so clear in this drawing that I'd hate to actually screw them up. So I'm going to pull a circle template. That's way too big. That's still too big. Yeah, it went pretty good. A little tip I do, like with the eyelid, giving a little bit of shadow to the top of the iris and pupil. I'll let the line on the outer outline of the iris to thicken up a bit. It gives it a little bit more value and depth. I want the pupil to be, yeah, I think I can freehand the pupil. So I'm also going to go back in after and throw a little bit of white paint there and about there to make that eye feel like really. Do a little few dots here to imply some color value in there. Yeah. So I left a little bit of indication of where I'm going to put the pupil highlight when I go back in there. It may not be exactly accurate. I can like touch it up when I use the white paint, but that automatically makes that eye feel like it's a little bit more alive to me. So this eyebrow, I ended up drawing over. I drew the head first, and I drew the head on top of it because that's how I roll. It's how I do all my witches too. I draw the whole head and face, and then I draw the witch's head on top of it, and I erase it before scanning ink. Again, doing a dark line on the outer edge of the lower lid. A little tracky. I probably should have either had this really cut into the eye or stay away from the eye. They're almost touching, so I'm going to have to be heavier with my line weight to not make it too much of a distraction. Okay, I think I use that size, so I'll probably use the same size here in this eye. Double check, is that? Well, that eye size. Okay, I should do something a little more professional when I use a circle template. I should put like a little piece of tape or something on next to the yeah, it's the right size. Next to the circle I use for the iris, so I don't end up doing like one big eye and one tiny eye. I guess the hat shadow would be coming across here, so that would actually allow this eye to be a little darker too. Stuff I'm going to play with when we get close to the finish. So I think I got these eyes more or less right. The large Sharpies are something you have to, if you're going to use them, you have to get comfortable with. So you play around with them a lot on sketches and drawings that don't particularly matter. And as soon as you get comfortable with them, that's when you start using it in professional work. I think that's turning out all right. Actually, there might be a little bit of schmutz on the underside of my template that's going in the art, so I'll have to brush that down a bit after. Other trick areas, the tip of the nose, especially on female characters, nose tends to be very, very delicate. So I'll stick with double 5 until I'm done the features to my satisfaction. Now, I don't know. Some of the reference was right from the video game, so I'm not entirely sure if she's wearing lips. Really looks like lipstick here. Um, some of the other shots, the lips are just dark. I don't know if it's lipstick, so I'm just going to go dark with the lips. If it's too dark, hopefully I'm not disappointing the Mark who commissioned this one. But I'll make the mouth pop. So. And I'm turning the paper just for convenience of making the lines the way I want to. Wow. Okay. So all the really tricky parts are essentially done. I kind of want. Looks like there's a little bit of fall away in the light in the lip and you're in the reference. So I figure, I'm stealing that. All right. Cool. And now I can be a little looser. In fact, I can probably switch over to my 01, nice heavier line. So the really careful line in the face is done. I might be really careful with the choker that she's wearing here. And I'll probably be really fine with some of the line work in the hair when I get to it. But for drawing the rest of the structure of the face, I want a slightly heavier line, especially since it's going to be contrasting against this very light hair the character has. And this time I am playing copyright-free music in the background if you can hear it. I made the mistake on day 3 of my C2E2 at home of playing the music a little bit loud. And I figured, you know what, if it's a little loud, they'll do a strike in one part and they'll want me to mute it. Which I had no problem like having like 8 hours of like video. I'm pretty okay with having a few minutes empty of sound. But it turns out the process to remove a song requires them to go through the whole video and then redo it. So there was multiple strikes on the video, and it would have taken weeks to go through song after song after song to remove all the extraneous music that I wasn't supposed to have on that video. So I just deleted the whole day. Silly. My bad. I should have known better. I did know better. I just thought I could get away with it, I guess, which is not in my defense at all. I guess that's just me being stupid. There. So yeah, so public domain music only. And it's innocuous. It's a little like the type of music you'd hear on like corporate PR programming, if you ever had to listen to that. There's some back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I did some internal corporate storyboarding for stockholder meetings. And they would send along the music they were planning to use. And it would sound a lot like this, kind of like just, if you can hear it, it's just almost sounds like it was made by machines. And to think that, this is before all the algorithm generated music we're going to start getting like crazy. People actually made this. Oh my God, it wasn't made by robots. Such a terrifying thought. Probably going to go back in and I'm going to detail in some more sort of stitching the leather of this. checking to see if there's any comments to address. It should be a little thicker. The thing I like most about liquid ink products is they allow me to scribble ink, whereas like I can just literally that, just scribbling down a line in a value till I get what I'm happy with. Something I was never able to get out of a brush or a dip pen because brushes, scribbling with a brush doesn't seem to make sense because it's so brushy. You can't get like a lot of fine lines unless you're using like a 01 or something. And a nib, because it's pronged like a fountain pen. You scribble with it, you're going to immediately be ripping into the paper. So I know some people will have a lot more confidence and scribble with a nib like that. Every time I do it, I always ended up having a disaster. So here's me using the tools that allow me to maintain my bad habits. Because I remember back when I was learning the craft of drawing, doing scribbly lines was considered a lack of control, which may be it. I just may not have any sort of self control when it comes to inking. How's that looking? That's looking pretty. Actually, right now she looks more like a cowboy than a pirate. I think as soon as I get more into the tricorn hat here and the feathers and everything, it'll actually work a little bit better. It's tricky since she's so light haired. I still want the implication that this hair is in shadow, but I don't want it to become dark. Still want it to read as very, very light hair. So where the shadow would be, even though I'm not going to be doing shadow tones in terms of hyper realism here, where the shadow from the hat would naturally fall, I'll let the hair be a little bit darker. But I'll let the light hit the more exposed sun and just have much finer lines running through it. A little bit more line right there. Yeah, the whole AI thing is it's a nightmare, such a nightmare. I'm so impressed and proud of the WGA still standing up for human creativity over AI nonsense. I'm a little upset at the tentative deal that the Directors Guild went and took. considering that a number of the members of the DGA certainly do not like the deal. A lot of them are hyphenates. They're writer directors. And as I understand it, they're just as upset as the writers that this tentative deal was announced. And talking to my friends, this was designed not to dishearten the writers as much as try and get the actors to show less support. The idea that the studios are going to win because the directors signed on board on the deal so quickly. Apparently, the theory is they did this to keep the actors from continuing to support the writers, because, as I understand it, the assumption is in the producer credits, producer zone, is that the writers are why there's so much sympathy. Sorry, the actors are why the writers have so much sympathy with the strike. If the writers weren't, like, the known people weren't going on the picket lines with the writers and giving speeches saying we're with the writers because they give us the words to say. Colin Farrell, I just shared it on my Instagram earlier today. Colin Farrell did a wonderful impromptu video talking about the importance of writers to the entire creative endeavor of movies and TV. And it was just wonderful and charming. And it felt like a speech, but it was clear it was like he was just speaking his mind on the picket line. Yeah, it's all hands on deck, fighting all these people who want AI to replace creatives at every single level. And anyone who tells you that, human creativity can't be replaced, well, in many ways they're right. It can't be. But the vast majority of the audience, honestly, is looking for a distraction more than, like, beautiful, timeless quality. And AI will be up to providing a distraction. All the quality will go away. All the things that you see and watch will be regurgitated things that we used to like. And with the complete dearth of new quality programming or movies or TV or music coming out, our standards were lower. Occasionally an AI will put out something that will work, and people go, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" And then a lot of times they'll put out stuff and say, "Oh, I can move to it. It's got a beat. It seems like a story. I could follow it. I kind of like the characters, even though they're exactly like characters I've seen 100 times before." This is what the studio guys want, because it costs them nothing to get an algorithm to generate these stories. It costs nothing to have an algorithm generate a character that kind of sort of looks like Brad Pitt, sounds a little bit like Brad Pitt, delivers all the lines perfectly, costs nothing. And suddenly, you don't need a Brad Pitt anymore. And just for an example, I'm just saying Brad Pitt because he's been in the news a lot lately. They're already using it to push out voice actors. In fact, it just hit the news the other day. The job loss in the U.S., every month there's job losses, and they track them. And this past month, they had a new entry for causes of job losses, and that was replaced by AI. Even though I keep saying AGM for algorithm generated media, this was literally the first time that they have jobs that they know were people that were made redundant because of AI software. And when I say AI, I don't mean artificial intelligence, because anyone who's done any reading on this knows full well they're not artificial intelligence; they're algorithms. And I can go into more depth on that if people want. But algorithms are what Facebook uses to determine what you see in your feed. That's not artificial intelligence. That's programming that basically looks at your past likes habits and makes a guess based on that, on what you would like to see in your feed, or what they think you would like to see in your feed. and that's taken to an extreme level. That's what these AI programs are. They are, and people using them actually improve their function. They look at a whole bunch of images and they get a general idea what a face is, and or what a person looks like. And if you type into, like, Midjourney, I want a portrait of Fidel Castro, there's enough images of Fidel Castro that the AGM has studied that can give you a pretty good facsimile of what Fidel Castro looks like. And the more people who ask for portraits of Fidel Castro, the more the program will refine how it determines what Fidel Castro looks like. And that's because it's not only analyzing the data that's already been fed, often without the permission of people who own it or created it. It's using the process of what the people who type in the prompts like and what would they respond to as being better or not better. And it's just terrible, man. There's at no point is there any humanity in any of this. And the more realistic it gets, the harder it is for I hate to say it, the layman to understand how much is being lost by not having humans make the decisions on what goes into an image, what goes into music, what goes into animation or movies. And the stuff is developing exponentially, not linearly. It's improving. Let's say it's getting 50% better every month. It's more realistic. It's more diverse. It can mimic styles better. And every single month it gets 50% better. And that's cumulative with the previous month's worth of efforts because of people using it. It's scary, man. I could go on about it for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. I won't, though, because this is an art stream and we're all here to watch me draw, I think. At least I'm here to draw. Let's see here. Hey, Azan. Yeah. So I heard that about the Matrix movies too. Yeah, it's oh my god, it's we already have 3D animated stuntmen, which is good because I mean we don't want people to get hurt. But now with the algorithm, it would be so easy to take some of these developing algorithms that are invested in animation and in 3D animation, feed them the entire library of Bruce Lee's martial arts performances, and then work with those programs, train them further, and then they could spit out Bruce Lee fight choreography. And it would appear new because it's generating based on the situations given to it, but it would still be Bruce Lee's fight choreography and movements. And the people doing it don't see anything wrong with that. And that's, I think, to me, the most upsetting thing. The amount of people that don't see that sort of like theft as theft. In fact, in a chat earlier today, I referred to it as cultural rape, and that the people who want us to shut up and take it, and they don't care about our objections over our work being taken, they're clearly cultural rapists. If you want to take stuff away from people over their objections because you have the power to do it and no other reason provided, it's not just theft, it's abuse. I mean, it's like if I come up with my own characters and then, a year down the road, some AGM moron decides to create comics with my characters, and he goes, well, I didn't charge anything for him. Doesn't matter. He took my property, my art style, my characters, and he did something with them. That is not cool. It's not even fan appreciation because it's not like they learned how to draw and they're showing appreciation by actual hard work. It's like the computer does all the work. All the work is done by the computer. How's that holding up? I got some volume. I'm going to go back in there and do some other stuff. I might even use some rubber stamps in there. We're in for a long fight. I don't think there's a lot of people running around saying that AGM's here to stay because it's already here. They haven't realized that none of this algorithm generated media has any legal protections. None. So for all their discussion about it being here to stay is the assumption is that suddenly nothing will have any value because the algorithms have rendered everything of no value because it has no value. And I can see a motivation for corporations to do that. If suddenly no intellectual property can be enforced, everything can be stolen. And that means the people with the biggest, smartest tools to bring to bear are always going to win. So right now we have Disney, who's fighting tooth and nail to maintain all its copyrights, all its trademarks. But if it gets to the point where intellectual property is abandoned in the pursuit of getting algorithm software, the companies with the best, fastest supercomputers that can produce so much content, it doesn't matter that they can't protect it in terms of copyright. But if they could put out a 2-hour Marvel movie, not just every month, every week, to a point where, and they charge, instead of like, the usual theater experience of like $15 to $20 per person going to see a movie, it's like, pay $2, you get to watch it now. I mean, to the point where it's so cheap, no one's going to pirate it. They'll still be the ones making all the money, and no one can afford to compete with them. You make your movie in the traditional way, and suddenly you have to, charge $20. But Disney's only charging, $5 for their movies. And you're like, well, how do you compete with that? You don't. And that's how they would wipe out the competition, because the competition couldn't afford to survive. They couldn't cover their costs by doing things the traditional way. Let me know if I'm babbling. Thanks so much. I do love texture. Texture and lighting are my two favorite things in art to play around with. These hats I think were made out of felt, so it would have like a coarse texture. So I'm trying to get that in there. Oh wow, we're almost an hour in already. I better speed up a bit. It'd be really fun when I get to these feathers here in the back. Actually, what I want to do is I'm going to grab that. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Let's solidify the black here close to the rim to get the idea that there's that leather tip, a little leather wrap around the rim of the hat there. There we go. There'll be one on this side too. So I might as well draw it in since I got the pen out. I hope you guys can see how freely the ink is flowing out of these pens. It allows me to work quickly, allows me to build texture really quickly, and value. And it's in a way that, like, I used to use high-tech C's. They were like a gel ink ballpoint pen, beautiful line control and quality, but the line, if I moved this quickly with those, the line would be skipping like crazy. And this is already on a vellum paper, so it's already kind of toothy. So ink would be prone to, like, I mean, if I do a super fast line, you can get super breakage here, which is a great effect to go for. But if I was moving just this quickly with the high-tech C's, the line would be breaking up already. And by using this, the line flows out. I can just work faster. Now, the sounds horrifying from JC Dragon. Are we talking about the hat being made out of felt is horrifying, or I'm assuming it's the algorithm stuff that we're all worried about. The most, I think, honestly, the most concerning thing for me is a little while ago there was some hope that just kind of rippled through the pro-human component of this fight, because all those big leaders in AI put out that paper saying that, we should put a moratorium on the development of algorithm software here until we have some better safeguards going on. I think the most telling thing is none of those people have followed through. None of those high profile tech people have followed through in any sort of action. In fact, I believe a couple of them have actually started investing into their own algorithm properties. And to me, that comes across, and maybe I'm cynical, but it comes across that I'm just going to go dark here, and dark like that. There we go. Maybe I'm cynical, but it comes across that entire point of that letter was to give the other smaller algorithm startups a pause, put them in chaos, thinking that, well, if Elon Musk is against algorithms, maybe we're doing the wrong thing, only for Elon Musk to throw a few million at algorithm software development himself. It was very duplicitous. I had a little bit of hope considering some of the people on the list, but with so many of them immediately turning around and saying, and using the time it bought them to catch up with people who are already making these apps and software tools, and going around and making jobs more obsolete in more areas. Yeah, it's going to be a fight. I think the biggest fight, the only way I think we could seed the ground is if they turned around and offered a healthy universal basic income across the board. If your job is killed by AI, you're immediately given a salary equivalent to what you were making before the AI came along, and it increases with the rate of inflation in perpetuity till you die. That would be the only fair way to keep doing this stuff that's destroying careers and industries. Adobe just released their generative AI inside Photoshop. I don't know if you saw the little bit of hoopla they made with that, where it's like you can create entire backgrounds for your photographs using AI inside Adobe Photoshop. And I'm like, I know people, that was their job, photo manipulation. And they do it really, really well, much better than this Adobe app does. I mean, it's a difference between like quality 3D animation and like really chintzy stuff that was done like 50 years ago. Maybe not 50, 30 years ago. And but it's there. And if you're already subscribing to Photoshop, why not use it? It's there. And I think that's where the fight's going to be. If Adobe has to pay money for all the jobs it kills by doing this, considering that we've never done that as a society before, but if we actually started making corporate corporations liable for the jobs they kill in their pursuit of more money, they might not be as aggressive to, like, fire a third of the workforce and replace them with kiosks and that sort of stuff. I mean, it's just, I mean, if you can wipe out your entire accounting department down to like 3 people by laying off 1,000 because of AI, but if the government turned around and said, no, you're gonna have to keep paying those guys until they retire or hit retirement age, they might go, whoa, hold it, what? That's not capitalism. Capitalism is about making the rich and powerful more rich and powerful. We have to start fighting back. Because the one thing we know for a fact is the rich and powerful do not care. If they can get away with it, they will get away with it. Yes, I'm a socialist. I'm from Canada, after all. All right. Should I do more of this or should I do the feathers? Feathers might take a little bit more time, so maybe I should do those first. Well, yeah. Sorry, I'm responding to JC Dragon's comment. Think of it this way: if the cost of producing AI movies is the electricity you feed into your computer, and if you have massive computers with vast amounts, let's say you have James Earl Jones's voice, you own it in perpetuity. You can do all the Darth Vader. You could do a Darth Vader TV series entirely algorithm AGM manufactured based on prompts from your producer core, with a handful of people to just do some edits. And a lot of editing is already done by AGM already. It costs you nothing but a few moments of time from people lower on the totem pole. You won't have directors, you won't have actors, you won't have special effects departments. You really won't need that many editors. You won't need designers. You won't need, it's literally thousands of jobs per TV show that are eliminated if you go completely algorithm generated. And since it costs you nothing to make, and you can make it in no time at all, there's no time for, like, you don't have to wait for writers because it gets written as it gets animated, or it gets completely done in like some new Chat GPT app adjustments, like, Star Wars writer Chat GPT. All right, and it just literally specializes in writing Star Wars crap, and it just gets done, and it's right there to watch. And the people who are deep Star Wars fans, they might hate it initially, but it's a constant stream of Star Wars. Some of it might actually be comparatively good. I mean, I'm thinking like of how weak that Boba Fett series was. I mean, I have a hard time believing that a complete app just rehashing everything that's already happened in Star Wars and what fans want and everything that's scraped off the internet couldn't do something on a par with that. And so, I mean, and that's a pretty low bar. And so you think about it, it's like, well, if all they do is basically be better than the worst stuff that people make, people are going to go, okay, that's not too bad. I mean, people don't exactly have great taste. Is that a little too negative? That's probably a little too negative. I should keep it down. Who wants to listen to negative people all the time? Yeah, it's terrifying. You'd never get another Ted Lasso. You'd never get another Secession. You would just get nothing but what the vast majority of people spent money on or time with for the last, I don't know, how long is it? How old is TV? How old are movies? Everything that get analyzed and broken down to the bare minimum of content and quality. And we'd be stuck with that because here's the thing I've talked about before, but a lot of people don't seem to really get. So this paper, this artist quality paper, not cheap, right? And part of the reason it's not cheap is because fewer and fewer people are buying it every year. It's a niche item. It's mostly bought by art students and tired old people like me. And but if the entire art community was killed by AGM, as in terms of like extinction level event, where it's like no one could afford to use real people because their competition's all using AGM, it's inevitably going to put all artists like me out of business. Now, if all the artists like me are out of business, there's no reason to teach kids to do what I do. So that means there won't be any students buying materials. There won't be any professionals buying materials. So even if someone wants to do a drawing like this paper won't get made because there will be no customer base for it. Or it'll get made, instead of like $20 a pad, it'll be $50 a pad. And that's then art becomes entirely the pastime of the already rich, and they're just, fucking about because they're the only ones who can actually afford to do this, which is another big worry about this. But if it's not just the paper, it's these pens. These pens won't get made. These are artist pens. And if there is no more artists, if they get made, instead of being like $3 a pen, it'll be $30 a pen. And they're disposable. So you have to be able to spend, like I go through like a box every month or two. And that box would be like $360. I don't know that I could spend $1,800 on pens every year. That's a little crazy. All that stuff goes away, all of it. And the same for paints. Paints become harder to find. Canvas, specialty papers, special paints, limited colors. So all the people running around saying, well, there'll still be humans making art. Well, who? Just the incredibly wealthy, or just people, everything will be ephemeral on digital pads. So no one will be drawing on paper anymore. No one will be painting on canvas. No one will be painting on watercolor paper. A lot of the people who are like thinking their jobs are going to be untouched, they're not going to understand. It's so much stuff is going to be wiped off the map, in terms of like, if your job has any repetition at all, it can be done by algorithms. We'll be left with physical labor jobs. Not that there's anything wrong with physical labor jobs, but that everyone will be competing for the physical labor jobs. So it's like, if I'm no longer allowed to be an artist, I have to find a physical labor job to do. So that means either I'm with my limited training, either I go back to being a cook or a waiter, or I work in a warehouse somewhere that isn't wholly roboticized, or I learn a trade skill like repairing electrical stuff or plumbing or something like that. But it won't just be me. It'll be significant chunks of the entire population rushing for the handful of physical labor jobs that are now the only jobs that aren't being replaced by AGM and AI software. It's a lot of people, just a lot of pro AI. I was just on a TV show a couple of weeks ago, and of all the people on the panel, I was the only one who was, well, Diane Francis, who's a noted writer here in Canada, was also very negative on the effects of AI. They were like, oh, it's going to create jobs. No, it's not. It's going to devastate every industry that relies on a certain skill set that can be replicated. There's almost no skill set, non-physical labor skill set, that can't be replicated by AI with light robotics. And that means the entire rest of the population are going to be racing for these physical labor jobs that right now make a decent living because they're in demand. But if everyone's trying to do them, you can't make a living. If there's, right now you can make a good living because there's like 30 plumbers per 500 people. But as soon as you got 100 plumbers per 500 people, you can't make a living as a plumber because the competition's too high. And no one's actually realizing that that's what's going to happen. And it's happening fast. It's terrifying. Yeah, yeah. So it's everyone who's like saying, "Oh, it's going to create new jobs." No, it's going to create new types of jobs, but not to the degree that's going to replace all the jobs we are going to lose. And I don't like being negative about this stuff, but a lot of people aren't really waking up to how existential this stuff is. And the politicians are generally running scared from what is going to happen. And I understand it. I mean, politicians are always running scared. They don't want to be the first person to say something for risk of looking foolish or losing votes. But they're going to have a lot of constituents who will have no jobs, no money. The tax base will dry up. America is already practically a third world country. Canada will follow suit. Large chunks of Europe will, although Europe apparently is already looking to stomp on AI pretty hard, which is lovely. I hope they follow through on that. It's I'm worried. I have to say this. I am really, really worried. Is there any art questions? As I go on and on and on what this negative hellscape we're about to enter into. I'm not talking about Spider-Verse yet because I haven't seen it yet. I really want to. Really want to see it. I've heard nothing but amazing things about it. I think I'm gonna go dark there and let that lapel pop up. So have any of you guys seen Spider-Verse yet? Don't spoil it for anyone else, but I've yet to hear anyone say anything bad about it. Thank you. I do have some hope here. I know I'm talking pretty negatively about like what's going on here and what the results of unfettered algorithm nonsense will wreak upon us. But I have a gut feeling that we might. There's just enough people waking up to it, and no one's gone and done the dumb thing and um, let algorithms actually hold copyright. Algorithm generated media hold copyright yet. Every attempt to actually try and get that discussion open has been stymied so far. Even the tentative deal with the DGA seems to have shut things down a bit. With the reps for the studios basically saying that we know that none of this stuff could hold copyright, so it's not going to happen. Whereas, kind of want to see proof of them on that. Basically, putting that in writing that they won't let anything happen. Because I know they're going to try it. They're looking to save billions of dollars in production costs by just booting people off the payroll. One thing, I had a friend who thought I was being a little bit, sky is falling about this. And I said, how many actors do you think that worked in Star Wars who are retired or near retired, or they have estates that are, struggling with the bills that like everyone else is? And Disney said, we will pay you $50,000 for the rights to your voice and your image from the time you shot Star Wars films. Let's say they go to a bigger star like Billy D. Williams. Say, we'll give you $250,000 if plus a small percentage if we can generate new Lando Calrissian material based on the stuff that was in the Star Wars movies. And I've heard stories that Billy D is, needs money, as most people who are like semi-retired and have worked in Hollywood for years. And $250,000 might be enough. Maybe he'd negotiate up. But once he sells that to Disney, they can make unlimited number of Lando Calrissian movies in any language using his voice, his likeness, in perpetuity. Whereas otherwise, it just wouldn't be possible. He's too old to do it. Same with record producers. I mean, Rolling Stones are really, really old. Pretty soon, Mick's not going to be able to even sing, let alone dance on stage. Record label can say, okay, we want to buy the rights to your entire catalog, and including all your audio recordings and the rights to make new audio recordings based on your voices. And they might say yes. And then it's game over. Suddenly we're getting new Rolling Stones music made by algorithm based on listening to their entire back catalog. And it'll sound a lot like the Stones. It might even sound better than the last few Stones albums. Well, that's not too hard. And then that's our entire soundscape. Is it real, or is it, algorithm generated music? Same with the Beatles. The further you get away from the living Beatles and their immediate heirs, the more likely they're willing to just take the money. And I'm not talking, that may not happen for decades, but it's certainly something that can be easily accommodated. It's like we already have right now we have believable AI generated voice work that sounds exactly like it was weird how crappy it was considering the money that went after those Trump bucks. Apparently he's a big fraud, top to bottom, and it has nothing to do with Donald Trump, which is surprising for a big fraud. But the Trump bucks, they actually created a Trump speech for Trump bucks using the algorithm voice synthesizer. And I heard it, and if you're not really listening carefully, it sounds exactly like Trump saying it. It doesn't sound like the old robot voice like they used to give Stephen Hawking. It sounds like Trump talking. It's scary. Oh, here we go. Our question. Maybe spicy, but also relevant here. How difficult do you find it to draw epicathic folds and the other racial markers for races not your own? And there's more up here. Okay, I missed something. I'll get back to Daniel's in a second. I've lucked out. My first Marvel gig had a very racially diverse cast. So I surrounded myself with lots of photo reference to try and make sure I didn't screw up some of those very specific racial elements. in the features of the characters I was drawing. And again, the moment, luckily, Mark gave me reference for this character, so the epicanthic folds and all that stuff was right there. But I've also drawn in my career so far. I've already drawn so many non-Caucasian peoples that I kind of already know where I should look to either make sure I don't make a mistake by either getting reference or I just remember how to draw it. There's an interesting even now it's still things recently. I've drawn a lot of African American and black characters in my career, but someone just pointed a little detail about the way the dark into the fingertip wraps and stops, and it was different than what I thought. I thought actually, well, I wouldn't want to really get into that without having the reference on hand, but it was a subtle thing that in past drawing wasn't my responsibility because I wasn't coloring those works. But where I did color it now, and I have to do that detail. I would go, and to make sure I didn't screw up, I'd pull up reference specifically to that area to make sure I got it right. So a lot of it's if I know, if I've drawn it enough that I know it by memory, I have no problem drawing it. If it comes up and I go, you know what, I'm not really sure if Pacific Island eyes are like this, or Northern Chinese eyes are exactly like Southern Chinese eyes. You know, it just I don't want to be the guy making that mistake. I mean, they may be identical, they may be different, but at the very least, I will make an effort to not make the mistake, even if it turns out I was right in my memory of the situation anyway. Hopefully that answers the question. And Daniel, haven't seen either Spider-Verse film yet. You haven't seen either? Oh my gosh. I will likely end up doing a Blu-ray double feature. Okay, just so you know, because some people are upset about this. I remember hearing about it, so I'm not upset about it. But apparently the new Spider-Verse film is number 2 of 3. They're making a trilogy, and the second one ends in a cliffhanger. So if you held off this long watching the first movie, maybe you want to just wait like another year and a half and watch all 3 together. And oh yeah, that was asked by Mark. Yeah, Mark. Nope. You provided me the reference. It was perfect, and gave me. Hopefully, you like what you see so far. Hopefully, I got it right. I've still got to go and do the white paint in the hair here, but I find a lot of artists, especially up until the early 2000s, they would rely on the color, like they would draw straight Caucasian eyes or really like badly racially caricatured eyes for people from the Pacific Rim, and let the colorist color them. And they'd use that terrible yellow that when they had more limited palettes to use, and it was so obviously didn't give a shit. I've seen some really bad, intrinsically almost like knee-jerk racist shit in both the coloring and the drawing of comic characters. And this is well past the age of what we would consider when that sort of racism was essentially allowed. I almost want to say like the Mickey Rooney era of comics drawing and coloring. Some people might get that. It felt like almost like a Dennis Miller reference. And weird, maybe this is an aside. One of my first gigs outside of art school was doing some illustrations for textbooks. And for all these so-called woke crap that the right wing is claiming exists, school textbooks were very sensitive to culture and sex and race in the books. So they would, as often as not, my art director for an assignment would very carefully inform me in advance that certain things would have to be vetted. If I drew Chinese Canadian students, they would actually have people on staff who would make sure that I got everything right. There wasn't there was a certain genericism allowed in like really 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 large groups where no one's details could be seen. But I remember this one time I was drawing a group of just 5 children, and in the art description, 2 of the kids were supposed to be Chinese Canadian, and one was supposed to be Pakistani Canadian. And I had a real hard time, apart from skin color, how to determine what a Pakistani Canadian kid would look like. So I just did the more generic thing, and they sent it to. I guess nowadays they'd call them a sensitivity reader. It basically was just subject matter expert within the cultural thing, and they just weirdly enough just suggested I give them a different type of shirt, which had nothing to do with the culture. I guess they were just justifying their job. But that type of cultural sensitivity was a big thing in kids' education materials in the 90s. So all the stuff that we're going through now is not new to me at all. Let me get this flowing a little bit. There we go. And to me, it just seems like common sense to pay attention and give people. Everyone wants to be seen. No one wants to be ignored. No one wants to be taken for granted. Um, we live in a deeply multicultural world now, and everyone arguing against that are only doing it because they're somewhat afraid that when they're no longer the majority, and of course I'm talking about white people, all the Karens out there, that they'll be treated as badly as they've treated divisible minorities before. I don't think that's true. I honestly think that the sooner we get away from a white dominated North American culture, the better we will be, because all the truly destructive stuff coming our way are from all these white supremacists. I think that gets the idea of the light hitting her hair better. All right. Let's see here. Anything else? Oh, good thing. Mark likes it. Um, Big media backlog in general. That's what happens when you become a comic creator. Okay, yeah. A lot of people haven't seen Breakfast at Tiffany's, but get it. I actually think she's done. Well, maybe I'll just do a little bit, detail in a few areas here. What do you think, Mark? You like it? Show I think I want to do a little bit more here in the feather. Get one feather darker here. Yeah, I think that's done. Your cat doesn't want you to have final say. I think it's done. I think any more work on this would be not good. Yeah, I think it's. How you like her? Actually, you know what? Because I did use my rubber stamps at the top, I feel it would be a mistake not to use rubber stamps here at the end. So I'm going to add a little bit of rubber stamp work to this. Just because I think that brings the whole very first streaming to a nicer close. What are we doing time-wise? 8:30, hour and a half in. All right, cool. I think we'll be done before 2 hours, which is my plan, my goal, to try and have these all go under 2 hours. And the other thing, I don't think I showed this yet. Also, when I'm using my rubber stamps, a lot of times I'll use Frisket, which is most famous for people who airbrush. I get to mask off areas with clear film. You can see through here. And so I can mask off specific areas. Let me just I'll just cut this in half with my scissors. So I'm doing. Now this stuff, it's paper mounted in the back of transparent film. See that? See the reflection of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask off her jacket and some of her hair. You see I used painter's tape, so it's low tack. Do that. What I do here is I generally dig my finger, fold it over, dig my fingernail, and then pull it. And it kind of separates the plastic from the paper by doing that. Not that you can see, but now I'm struggling with it again because I just pushed it back down. So artists should keep their fingernails cocaine snorting long. You can grab detail film like that. There we go. Film. So once the film's down, I take a X-Acto blade and I cut away the areas I want exposed to the rubber stamps when I apply them. I just peel that away. Oops. There we go. Now I might go back in after I do the rubber stamp and do a little bit of rendering in and around it. But I think what I want to do is I want to go, yeah, I better mask off the guts of this here too. And for that, I'll use Post-its. I don't want to risk putting rubber stamps all over the face I just spent all this time drawing. Sticks pretty good. Do another one, just keep it down there. So I'm going to layer it a couple times. So here, right here at the bottom. Put the other, toss them both over so quickly because I wanted to get on with the drawing. I think I missed. Oh, there it is. Put to the other side. Wrong sticky side. Yeah, this rubber stamp thing, I think I picked up, was it Matthew Dow Smith? Damn it, if I got his name wrong, it would be terrible. I saw Matthew Dow Smith made a very crude big rubber stamp he was using for some of his pieces. And I think it was just the one stamp. And I just kind of like, my brain exploded with the possibilities. And that's why I made these two. And soon to be, it reminds me, I'm going to have to get back on top of it and try and do some on Monday. See if I can find another shop to make my stamps for me. So I'm actually using it in my comics work too, which is amazing that I'm able to get so many cool things done with it. And normally I do my white paint after I do my rubber stamps. As you can see, I don't know if you can see, it picked up some of the white paint. I'll just put it back, reapply it. Also going to do some more line work on top of that now that I've actually applied that. So it just kind of makes it pop a little bit more. At least I think it does. And I think the one will do. Here we go. I'm gonna lose this edge a bit into the stamp. I don't understand. All right, and there she is done. What do we got here? I have done it. I've done shadow work with the stamps before. It is so very finicky, and I've never been satisfied with it. I find going for the graphic choice, especially with like full-on comics work, to just let the color do that and let the texture be texture instead of purely value is better. I might at some point make specialty stamps that allow me to do like tonal work, but I right now I wouldn't know what they'd look like and how I'd use them with any consistency. Maybe rounder stamps that instead of like fading out to one edge, it'd fade out to all edges, like a radial burst. So I could like just use the edges to build like softer tones that might merge. I don't know. That seems almost counterintuitive to the idea of like these being able to create like how quickly I created these general tone areas. It would feel like it also I think would overwhelm the line work to a certain degree and might make everything too mushy, if that makes sense. But I have done things where, like, especially on some of my witches, where I've done most of my experimentation with the rubber stamps, I've masked out shadow areas and then rendered in either with white paint or black paint or black ink to soften the edges of it. And more often than not, it ends up being underwhelming to me from what I saw in my head. But yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with this. I can't remember the character's name at the moment. I should have wrote it on the reference. But she's done. And with that, I think we're done tonight. I'll be back next week, and I'm doing the Black Cat. And then the week after that is Hellboy. Oh, thank you, Mark. Yeah, there we go. Thank you so much. And if you want to be the week after Hellboy, you just go to the Cadence Comic Art site and you choose the commission entry level. I'm only doing 9x12s for this. I'm saving my 11x17s for specific open commission slots or conventions at home events like I did for Chicago a couple months ago. And with that, I want all of you guys to have a lovely night, and I will see you next Sunday. Night all.